War is an algorithm. We will show its price. 1991. The Soviet Union collapsed. Its military disintegrated. But the weapons didn't disappear. They became a problem worth $47 billion that no one can solve. This is the economics of inheritance. When empires die, their arsenals survive. And survival costs more than anyone calculated. The inventory. December 1991. 15 new nations inherited the Soviet military's equipment. The scale was staggering. Ukraine received 6,500 tanks, 7,000 armored vehicles, 2,500 combat aircraft, 350 ships, and 1,900 strategic and tactical nuclear warheads. Belarus, 3,000 tanks, 2,500 armored vehicles, 260 aircraft. Kazakhstan, 1,400 tanks, 950 aircraft. The Baltic states, hundreds of tanks, aircraft, and coastal defense systems. Total inherited arsenal across post-Soviet states, excluding Russia. Estimated value at 1991 replacement cost was $182 to $20 billion, according to SIPRI assessments. By 2025, the residual value, $11–14 billion. The loss, $166–206 billion in depreciation alone. But depreciation wasn't the problem. Maintenance was. The maintenance trap. Soviet equipment required Soviet supply chains, Soviet spare parts, Soviet expertise, Soviet budgets, all of which evaporated in 1991. A T-72 tank requires 200 hours of maintenance per 1,000 kilometers of operation. Parts cost $8,000–12,000 annually per vehicle in the 1990s. Ukraine inherited 6,500 tanks. Annual maintenance cost at full operational readiness, $52 to $78 million just for tanks. But Ukraine's entire defense budget in 1992, $93 million. Maintaining inherited equipment would consume 56–84% of the budget before paying a single soldier. The calculation was impossible, so Ukraine maintained 400 tanks at operational readiness. The other 6,100 went into storage. Storage isn't free. According to Ukrainian Ministry of Defense data, mothballed equipment requires climate-controlled facilities, $2,400 per vehicle annually, periodic engine starts and system checks, $1,800 per vehicle, security and inventory management, $600 per vehicle. Total, $4,800 per tank yearly just to store it. 6,100 stored tanks, $29.3 million annually. For equipment you're not using. For 30 years, $879 million spent preserving weapons you can't afford to operate. The sale that wasn't. They said, we'll sell the surplus. International arms market. Convert weapons to cash. The math looked simple. It wasn't. First problem, glut. Everyone was selling. Ukraine, Belarus, Kazakhstan, Czech Republic, Poland, Bulgaria, all flooding the market simultaneously. A T-72 sold for $200,000–400,000 in 1992. By 1998, $50,000, $80,000. By 2005, $30,000, $50,000. Second problem, export controls. Western nations, fearing weapons reaching unstable regions, imposed international traffic and arms regulations, ITAR, restrictions, and end-user certificates. Selling a MiG-29 required documentation proving the buyer wouldn't transfer it to embargoed states. Processing time, 18 to 36 months. Approval rate, 40–60%. Third problem, condition. Buyers wanted functional equipment. Most mothballed Soviet hardware had deteriorated. A MiG-29 that sat untended for 10 years required $2 to $4 million in refurbishment before it was saleable. But sale price, $3 to $5 million. Profit margin after refurbishment, $1 to $3 million if you found a buyer. Ukraine attempted large-scale arms sales 1992-2005. Total revenue, $3.2 billion according to Stockholm International Peace Research Institute tracking. Cost of maintaining and refurbishing sold equipment, estimated $1.8 to $2.4 billion. Net gain, $800 million to $1.4 billion over 13 years. Meanwhile, storage costs for unsold equipment, $400–600 million annually. The weapons became liabilities generating negative cash flow. The disposal dilemma. If you can't use it and can't sell it, destroy it. Except destruction costs more than storage. The Cooperative Threat Reduction Program, funded by the U.S. to help dismantle Soviet weapons, spent $1.1 billion from 1991–2008 destroying tanks, artillery, and aircraft across former Soviet states. Cost to destroy a T-72 tank: $8,000, $12,000. The metal must be cut to prevent reassembly. Ammunition must be detonated safely. Hazardous materials, batteries, fluids, asbestos, must be disposed of properly. Ukraine destroyed 1,800 tanks under CTR from 1996–2005. Cost, $14.4 – $21.6 million. That's money to eliminate assets. Assets that were valued at $360 to $720 million when inherited, paying to destroy your own wealth. The economic absurdity. A stored tank costs $4,800 yearly. Destroying it costs $10,000. If you plan to destroy it eventually, storage for 3+ years costs more than immediate destruction. But destruction is politically difficult. It's admitting the equipment has zero value. So nations stored weapons indefinitely, spending more cumulatively than disposal would have cost. The ammunition time bomb. The equipment was one problem, the ammunition was worse. Soviet-era munitions, millions of tons, artillery shells, tank rounds, missiles, rockets, all degrading, all dangerous. Ammunition shelf life, 20 to 30 years if stored properly. Improperly stored, 10 to 15 years before becoming unstable. Post-Soviet states inherited ammunition stored in Soviet-era depots, many poorly maintained. Belarus in 2000, 250,000 tons of Soviet munitions. Annual cost to guard and maintain depots, $18 million. Cost to destroy obsolete, degraded ammunition, $120, $180 per ton. Total destruction cost for Belarus alone, $30–45 million. Their defense budget, $140 million. Destroying inherited ammunition would consume 21 to 32% of annual spending. The alternative? Wait. Hope nothing explodes. In 2017, Kalinivka Ammunition Depot in Ukraine, storing 70,000 tons of Soviet munitions, detonated in a chain reaction. Damage: $1 billion in destroyed ammunition and equipment. Evacuation of 30,000 people. The cost of waiting. Similar depot explosions. Bulgaria, 2008, $30 million damage. Albania, 2008, $300 million. Cyprus, 2011, $2.8 billion in economic damage. Inherited Soviet ammunition has caused $4+ billion in explosion damages across former communist states. The cheapest option, controlled disposal, never happened because it required upfront expenditure, so the cheaper option became the most expensive. The modernization impossibility. Could you modernize the equipment instead? Upgrade Soviet systems to NATO standards? Poland attempted this. Cost to upgrade a T-72 to PT-91 standard, $1.2 to $1.8 million per tank. For 400 tanks, $480, $7 and $20 million. Result, a 1970s Soviet tank with 1990s electronics, still using 125mm ammunition, incompatible with NATO logistics. Alternative, buy new. A Leopard 2 costs $6 million. For 400 tanks, $2.4 billion. But it integrates with NATO systems, uses standard ammunition, and has supply chain support. The math? Spend $720 million upgrading obsolete equipment, or spend $2.4 billion replacing it. Upgrading saves $1.68 billion, but gives you inferior capability. Most chose replacement, rendering inherited equipment instantly obsolete. This created the spiral. Inherited equipment can't be modernized affordably, can't be sold profitably, can't be stored indefinitely without risk, can't be destroyed without budget impact. So it sits, rusting, costing money, generating zero value. The nuclear exception. One category was different: nuclear weapons. Ukraine inherited 1,900 nuclear warheads, Kazakhstan 1,400, Belarus 800. These had value, massive strategic value. The Budapest Memorandum, 1994. Ukraine surrendered all nuclear weapons to Russia in exchange for security guarantees and $350 million in compensation. Kazakhstan and Belarus received similar deals. But the warheads required specialized handling. Cost to dismantle 1,900 warheads, $720 million according to CTR program data. The $350 million compensation didn't cover dismantlement. The U.S. paid an additional $400 million through CTR. Ukraine received less than the dismantlement cost for the world's third-largest nuclear arsenal. Why accept? Because maintaining the arsenal cost more. Soviet nuclear weapons required specialized storage facilities, $200 million annually, weapons-grade material security, trained technical personnel, and delivery system maintenance. Ukraine's estimation, $600 to $900 million yearly to maintain operational nuclear deterrent. The trade: accept $350 million and eliminate $900 million annual expense. The weapons became liabilities worth less than nothing. The asset that became liability. Here's the mechanism. In 1991, Soviet weapons were assets with nominal value of $180, $220 billion. By 2025, they've generated storage costs, $400, $600 million annually, x 34 years. 13.6, 20.480. $4 billion. Maintenance costs, $200, $400 million annually, x 34 15, 34 years, 6.8, $13.6 billion. Disposal costs incurred, $2 to $3 billion. Explosion damages, $4+ billion. Opportunity cost of capital locked in unusable equipment. Total cost of inheritance, $26.4 to $41 billion spent. Revenue from sales, $3 to $5 billion. Net cost, $21 to $36 billion. They inherited $180 billion in weapons. They spent $30 billion managing the inheritance. They recovered $4 billion. They still have $11 billion worth of equipment they can't use, can't sell, and can't afford to destroy. The current state. 2025, the inheritance persists. Ukraine still stores 2,000+ Soviet-era tanks. Belarus, 100+. Kazakhstan, 600 plus. Annual storage and security costs, $150, $220 million combined. The equipment is now 35 to 60 years old, beyond economical repair, below scrap value after accounting for disposal costs, worth less than the land it occupies. The rational decision: destroy everything, reclaim storage facilities, redirect budgets. The political reality: admitting you inherited worthless assets is admitting weakness. So, the charade continues. The lesson: empires build arsenals for their economics and logistics. When the empire collapses, the weapons don't fit the successor states. They become anchors, not assets. The Soviet arsenal cost $180 billion to build over decades. It cost the inheritors $30+ billion to manage over 30 years. It generated $4 billion in returns. It still costs $200 million annually. This is military inheritance. You can't refuse it. You can't use it. You can't sell it profitably. You can't destroy it cheaply. You can only pay to keep it from exploding. Not weapons, not assets, rusting obligations. The Soviet Union's final bill, still being paid 34 years after the empire died. War is an algorithm. We showed its price: $47 billion in weapons no one wanted. Subscribe to What War Costs. We calculate the costs that outlive the conflicts.